Hello everybody to the seventh session, or session number 7 in business research methods for business administration students, of course, which is going to be about measurement and scaling techniques. So the intended learning outcomes for this session is going to be that the students should be able to, of course, after finishing this session, explain the concepts of measurement and scaling. Also determine the needs of measurement in business research, why we need the business research, and also the students should be able to operationalize research variables so they can make the variables measurable, especially in quantitative research, and also distinguish level of scale measurement, and the students also should be able to identify goodness of the measurement, which is going to be related to the validity and reliability of the measurement. The session is going to be about, as I said, the overall of the measurement process, or the overview of the measurement process, variable operationalization, which is a very, very important process, and a lot of researchers needs to understand how they can operationalize the measurement, or the variable, so it can be quantitatively measured according to indicators. The second topic is types of scaling and scaling techniques, and the last one is the goodness of the measurements. So the measurement process is in the business research. Measurement of variable is indispensable requirement, is an indispensable requirement. So defining what is to be measured and how it is be accurately and reliably measured, which is very important. So something or a concept which are inherently abstract in their nature, like job satisfaction, like employee morale, like brand loyalty of customers. So all these are abstract variables. So these abstract variables sometimes needs to be measured quantitatively. These abstract, when we measure them quantitatively, we need to measure them through some indicators and through the analysis of this variable and measure it so it can be quantitatively measured. And some of the other variables, which is numerical, like sales volume, employees, X, Y, and Z. So a lot of variables can be quantitatively measured without going through the operationalization technique, which I have just talked about. So we can say that when we go for quantitative research, we need to measure the variables using some indicators. These indicators are very important to be accurate, and it is going to be for measuring the phenomena or the variable quantitatively. So what is measurement? Talking about measuring attributes or measuring phenomena or variables, that means we assign numbers. So from the word measure, that means we are talking about numbers, quantity. The assignments of numbers or other symbols to characteristics or attributes of objects according to a pre-specified set of rules. This is according to Secker and Bogie 2010. So we have two types of variables, as I have just explained: objective and precise measurement, like the volume of sales, or abstract and subjective, like job satisfaction. So what to do with the abstract and subjective variables to be measured quantitatively is operationalizing the concept. So I analyze the concept so it can be what we call operationalized. So the conceptual definition of the variable is very important. The variable is starting as a concept, so we need to conceptualize this variable to know the concept, what does it mean. Then it's going to be a construct, which is going to be giving a name to this variable or to this phenomena, and to measure it, that means it's going to be what we call a variable. So from here to here, that means here it's the conceptualization, and here is the measured variable. So we can make the variable measured by applying what we call the operationalization process. So what is operational definition? When we define the variable, we might define it in two ways. The first one is conceptual define, which is the concept. What is the concept? We need to know the conceptualization of this variable. Another definition is what we call the operational. That means a definition that gives meaning to a concept by specifying what the researcher must do. So incentives, operations that should be performed in order to measure the concept under investigation. So in defining the term or the concept or the variable operationally, that means we need to explain how we are going to measure it and how we are going to measure the concept under investigation. So the process of operationalization is the identifying scales that correspond to variance in the concept. So I need to analyze the variable into dimensions, then come up with some indicators. Then these indicators can be questions in a questionnaire, and after that I will put the scale which is going to quantify the data comes through or collected through the questionnaire. The variable operationalization is defining a concept so it becomes measurable. So I change the variable from the abstract side to be measured, which is achieved by looking at behavioral dimensions, aspects, properties denoted by this concept, and categorizing these into observable and measurable elements. The variable operationalization can be done through some steps, which is at least 5 steps. So the first step in operationalizing the variable is the theory level, which is in the theory level. This is in the theory level. So the first one is conceptualization. So we need to know what this variable means. What is the concept's definition? So define the concept theoretically. After that, we divide or analyze the variable into dimensions. So talking about, for example, organizational commitment, it can be divided into 3. According to Meyer and Allen, it can be divided into 3 main dimensions. The first one is affective. The second one is continuance. The third one is normative. The third step is analyzing these dimensions into indicators. So the indicators is just like what we use when we evaluate the performance, when we talk about strategic management. So we talk about KPIs, key performance indicators. These KPIs are used in order to indicate or measure the performance of the people or of the company. It is the same in research. So we divide or we analyze the dimensions into indicators. These indicators are going to be reflecting the measurement of the dimensions. After the indicators, or from the indicators, we are going to come up with questions. So every indicator might be 1 or 2 questions in the questionnaire. The third or the fifth or the last one is the scaling, which is quantifying the questions and both some numbers. So when we analyze this in the SPSS or any other statistical program, it can be giving quantitative data. So to operationalize the variable, we need to go through 5 steps. The first is the concept or conceptualization, or defining conceptually, then dimensions, then come up with indicators. These indicators can be transferred into questions, and then these questions can be measured by a scale. This is an example. You will find an example which is achievement motivation. This is a variable. This variable must be conceptualized. So what does it mean? It is a drive to excel, drive to pay much effort. Okay, so the first level is the conceptualization. What does it mean? Define the achievement motivation. The second level is going to be the what we call the dimensions. So the achievement motivation has been divided into 5 dimensions. The first one is driven by work or unable to relax. Number 2. Number 3, impatience with ineffectiveness or seek moderate challenges and seeks feedback. This third level is come up with indicators. So every dimensions can give or can be analyzed into different indicators. For example, if we take dimension number 2, which is unable to relax, we will have 2 indicators. These indicators are think of work even at home. The second one is does not have any hobbies, and this is indicator for the unable to relax, for the employee unable to relax. And from these indicators we will come up with the questionnaires items or questions. So the conceptualization of achievement motivation is identified as the drive to excel, to achieve in relation to sets of standards, to strive to succeed. So this is the definition of the achievement. The second is dividing into dimensions. The first dimension is constantly working in order to derive the feeling of having achieved and accomplished. Then many of them would find it hard to relax and think of things other than work. And number 3, prefers to work on his or her own rather than others, and then like to be engaged in moderately changing jobs, and then seeks for frequent feedback. If we will take indicator number 2, it's going to have 3 questions. For example, how often do they think of work while at home? So this might be a question in the questionnaire, and it's an indicator. Whether they have any hobbies or not, this is also another indicator. How they spend their time of the job, this is also another indicator for the achievement motivation. If we will change these indicators into questions, we will come up with these questions. The first question is some possible is how often, frequently do you think of work while at home? So this is the first question come up from the first indicator, and the scale is going to be here. This is the scale. It is the answers or the alternative answers provided for this question. Often, sometimes, never. These answers are going to be numbered. These numbers are going to be calculated in the SPSS for frequency, mean, and for any different statistical process. So the second indicator has been changed into another question, which is, do you have any hobbies? If so, how many hours do you spend a week for your hobby? The answer is going to be more than 4, 4 to 2, less than 2, and these answers are numbered, and these are what we call the scale, assigning scales. The third one is, how frequently do you engage in the following activities? Going to movies, theater, concerts, spending your weekend with your family, or coming together with the friends. So please answer using the following scale. These are also scales, whether often, sometimes, or never. So assigning scales, that means giving alternatives or fixed answers for the questions, and this is what we call the scales. And we have of course different types of scales. This is another example. If I have the learning, for example, the learning of this course, business research method, as a variable needs to be operationalized. So the first thing is, what is learning? I have to conceptualize the learning. Then I will analyze it into dimensions. We have 3 dimensions: understanding, retention, application. So this is the process of measuring or trying to measure the variable or the phenomena. This first dimension, which is understanding, can be analyzed into different indicators. The first indicator is, for example, answer questions correctly or give appropriate examples. For the application, for example, we have solve problems, applying concepts, understood and recall. And the second one is integrate with other relevant materials. Scaling techniques. This is very important. So we talked about operationalization, and we said it is going to be through 5 steps. Go for 5 steps in order to analyze or operationalize a variable. The first level is conceptualization. The second level is analyze the concept into dimensions. The third level is analyze these dimensions into indicators. These indicators are going to be the questionnaire items or the questions in the questionnaire. And after that, we will assign scaling scheme or scaling technique. So let's understand or talk or discuss about scaling techniques. What is scaling techniques? The scale is a mechanism or tool by which units of analysis are distinguished on the variable of interest of the study. So it is a series of items arranged according to value for the purpose of quantification. So putting values to quantify the data and to make the variable measurable. So we have different types of scaling techniques, of course. The first scaling technique is what we call nominal. The nominal scaling technique is a scale in which numbers of or letters assigned to an objective or object serve only as labels for identification or classification, like asking about gender, male or female, in the demographics part of the questionnaire. If we talk about the questionnaire, we have different types of scales. In the demographics, mostly we use the nominal, this one, asking about some of the variables and provide answers. The respondent is going to choose the first one or the second one, either this or that. So when I bought the item or the question about gender, if male will choose male, if female they will choose the female. The second one is what we call the ordinal, and this scale arranges objectives or objects or alternatives according to their magnitude in an ordered relations. So talking about academic status, freshman, sophomore, or junior. So this is arranging according to a certain scale. Just like if I ask you to organize the hypermarket you are visiting according to its the frequency of the visit you pay. So you are going to mention all of them, but you are going to start with the more visited than the less visited. The third one is what we call interval scale. This scale is used by most of the researchers because it is good for the questionnaires when we have research like examining the relationship between variables or impacts. So collect data about every variable and separately. This scale is a scale that both arranges objects according to their magnitude, distinguishes this ordered arrangement in units of equal intervals, but doesn't have a natural zero representing absence of given attributes. So it is like a continuum like this from negative to positive. Here must be 0. So it might be 3 choices or 5 choices or 7 choices or even 9 choices. So if 5 choices going to be like this, suppose we start here strongly disagree, and here agree, and here neutral, and here disagree, sorry, and here neutral, and here agree, then here strongly agree. So it is from negative to positive, and at the middle it is the neutral or I do not choice, which is representing statistically as 0. This is an example. I am concerned about the survival of the company. So the choices started from strongly disagree, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. This strongly agree is going to be here. Here agree, here neutral, here disagree. The last scaling technique is what we call ratio scale. This type of scale is a scale that has absolute rather than relative quantities and an absolute natural zero where there is an absence of a given attribute. Example, income or age. So you just double it from 2 as a ratio. For example, not only is the difference between 2 and 5 the same as difference between 14 and 17, but also 14 is 7 times as larger as 2 in an absolute sense. So it is the differences between choices but must be doubled or must be in a ratio scale. So the scaling is the 5th step in the operationalization, and that's we have just explained. Now, when the tool of data collection is ready, when the questionnaire, for example, is ready, we need to test what we call the goodness of the measurement. So testing the validity and reliability. So what is validity or the validity of the instrument? The validity of the instrument is the ability of scale to measure what was intended to be measured. So if I prepare the questionnaire, this questionnaire must measure the phenomena under investigation, or the research problem, or the variables under study, and nothing else. So we have different types of validity. The first type of validity is what we call face and content validity. And here in this type of validity, we need to test whether the questions asked in the questionnaire are related to the hypothesis set or established or related to the research problem or to the research questions or objectives. So whatever item is not related to these things is not must be discarded from the questionnaire. And this is what we call the content and face validity. The face validity is measuring whether it is the questionnaire is clear to the respondent or not. So we measure, or we keep the validity of the face validity of the questionnaire by distributing the questionnaire to 5 or 6 persons, potential respondents, and ask them to read and tell the researcher if there is any unclear point. The content validity is submit the questionnaire to at least 5 professors who are specialized in the area, and give them the research problem, the model or the framework, the objectives, the hypothesis, and ask them to match the items with these things, and ask for amendment, whether to recommend removing some of the items or recommend adding some of the items. It depends on them, and discuss this with your supervisor. The second type of validity is criterion validity. This is testing your questionnaire with a questionnaire has been established or has been tested or has been conducted in a research before, and then statistically find out if there is a relationship between your measurement and the measurement has been done before. That means it is valid. If not, it is not valid. So talking about for example job satisfaction. So if I will develop a questionnaire for job satisfaction, I must conduct this questionnaire with a ready-made and published questionnaire, and then find out whether there is a correlation between them or not. The contrast validity is compare the questionnaire with another questionnaire for different type of variables. So if there is correlation here, it's the opposite, it's not valid. If there is a correlation between your questionnaire and another questionnaire testing another phenomena, it's invalid or not valid. So if there is no correlation, it is valid. The fourth and last type or method or techniques of measuring the validity is what we call discriminant validity, which is dividing the questionnaire into 2 parts, the first part and second part, and then collect data separately, and then find out whether they have match or not match. The second thing to be tested or to test the goodness of measurement is what we call reliability. The reliability is the degree of which or to which measures are free from random error and therefore yield consistent results. So the consistency between the items of the questionnaire. So we have also 4 types of what we call reliability. The first one is which is the old method of testing the reliability, test and retest. That means I will distribute the questionnaire to a number of potential respondents the first day or for the first time, and then collect data and then distribute it again for the second time, which is the second day or after some time, by changing the numbering of the items. If the result is going to be the same, that means it's consistent and it's reliable, otherwise it is not reliable. The second one is what we call parallel form of reliability. That means I test the questionnaire with another questionnaire from prepared by somebody else and find out whether there is a correlation or not. The third, which is the most important one, is the interim consistency reliability, and this can be tested by the SPSS by an equation called alpha Kronbach. And according to most of the researchers if the value of alpha Cronbach in the SPSS for the questionnaire is going to be 70 plus, that means it is going to be reliable. If less than that, that means let's say 69, it is not reliable. Some of the researchers, they can accept until 60 plus as reliable questionnaire. The last one is split half reliability, which is again splitting the questionnaire into two different parts, and then collect data for both of them and find out whether they correlate or not. So by the end of this session, we have learned how to explain the concepts of measurement and scaling, and also determining the needs for measurement in business research, and also the operationalizing research variable, and again also distinguishing levels of scale measurement. And at the end, we have talked about identifying the goodness of measurement, which is the validity and reliability. As usual, the assignments is going to be attached and uploaded to the LMS for you for this session. We come to the end of this session, which is session number 7. We have talked about, we have given an overview about the measurement process and also the variable operationalization and how we can build a good measurement tool related to the research problem, to the objectives, and also the types of scaling and techniques or scaling techniques. And also we have talked about the validity and reliability. I hope everything is clear to you and understood, and see you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.